This content is based on facts for educational purposes. We do not intend to defame any company. Logos are omitted for copyright.
Most people think a crypto scam is just a guy in a hoodie trying to steal your password. They're wrong. The biggest scams aren't stolen from you. They're coded directly into the coins you're buying right now. Consider this your intelligence briefing on the real threats. All right, let's establish a baseline. In 2024, addresses we can confirm are illicit received a minimum of $40 billion, and that's a conservative figure. The real total only grows as our intelligence identifies new wallets being used by these threat actors. Now, here's the critical context. A lot of defenders of the space will point to this number, 0.14%, and say it's just a tiny fraction of the whole ecosystem. But that argument is a complete misdirection. The threat isn't spread out evenly. No, it's highly concentrated. It turns specific corners of the market into hunting grounds, where predators operate with, frankly, lethal efficiency.
Okay, our first threat vector. This is the one that's most common and probably the most misunderstood. These aren't just scams in the traditional sense. They are weapons, engineered at the code level. We're going to dissect the most prevalent one, the one-way street for your money, also known as a honeypot. You know that feeling, right? It's a vulnerability. The fear of missing out, FOMO, is a psychological trigger that these threat actors have absolutely weaponized. They manufacture the appearance of a parabolic move precisely to exploit that impulse. They're not just selling you a token, they're selling a fantasy that always ends in a trap. So to really understand the landscape, just look at the data. Over 80% of all scam revenue comes from these elaborate deceptions, right? Things like high-yield investment schemes and so-called pig butchering, which is a really sophisticated form of romance and investment fraud. But look over there, 4%, rug pulls. That is the operational term for these unsellable token traps we're about to break down.
The mechanics here are brutally simple. Scammers launch a new token, they create a liquidity pool so people can buy in, and then they engineer the price chart to look absolutely explosive. But the smart contract, the actual code that governs the token, has a hidden function. It prevents anyone except the creator's own wallet from selling. So you can buy all you want, but you can never cash out. You're not an investor, you are their exit liquidity.
And this just illustrates the sheer scale of the operation. We're not talking about a boutique crime here. We're seeing thousands, sometimes more than 10,000, of these malicious tokens launched every single month. It's an industrialized process. It's a factory line for producing financial traps.
And they operate at just incredible speed. The median lifespan of one of these schemes is 0 days. Let that sink in for a second. Half of these traps are set, sprung, and then abandoned on the very same day they're created. You just can't move fast enough.
So now we escalate. The tokens themselves are just the ammunition. We need to look at who was manufacturing the actual weapons, because this threat is professionalized.
You need to forget this idea of a lone operator in a basement. That's a strategic miscalculation on your part. The modern crypto scam is the end product of a syndicate.
And this industry is called crime as a service, or CAS. You have these platforms like Human and Guarantee, which is tied to a bigger Cambodian conglomerate, operating as a one-stop shop. They provide all the tools, the infrastructure, and the money laundering networks that criminals need to operate on a global scale.
I mean, the menu of services is just extensive. You need a fake identity with a convincing deepfake video? There's a vendor for that. Need access to stolen personal data to find new targets? Done. Need to launder the proceeds when you're finished? They offer entire networks for that. It's a turnkey solution for committing financial crime.
And this threat is constantly evolving. The data shows a direct link. When pig butchering scams see a spike in revenue, just a few weeks later, the AI software vendors on these dark platforms see a spike in their revenue. The criminals are taking their profits and reinvesting them into better technology. It creates this feedback loop where the scams just get smarter, more convincing, because they are literally self-funding their own research and development.
Okay, so now for our third and final threat vector. This is the top of the food chain. We're moving beyond organized crime into the realm of state actors. And these are the apex predators of this digital financial ecosystem. In 2024 alone, direct hacking of crypto platforms netted thieves over $2.2 billion. And that's completely separate from the scam revenue we just talked about. This is theft on a national scale. The real question is, who's responsible? This is the key metric you need to understand. Of that $2.2 billion, 61% was stolen by a single, highly disciplined, and completely relentless organization. The operational reality is this: that perception of a lone hacker is a dangerous myth.
State-sponsored syndicates from North Korea are the dominant force here. They account for over $1.3 billion in stolen funds just in 2024. And you have to understand, this isn't just cybercrime for profit. This is a component of a nation's foreign policy and its revenue generation strategy.
And their tactics are incredibly sophisticated. They aren't just breaking down the door from the outside. No, they are infiltrating crypto companies by getting their own operatives hired as remote IT workers, using fake credentials, going through third-party recruiters. They gain access from the inside, they study the networks, and then they execute these devastating private key compromises. They don't just hack your company, they become a trusted part of it first.
So, this brings us to the conclusion of our briefing. We've assessed the threats, right, from the token-level traps to the industrialized scam factories, and of course, the state-sponsored apex predators. Now for the operational advice.
First, you have to reframe your entire perspective. This is not a game of speculation. It is a hostile environment. You are operating in a war zone, and you need to adopt a corresponding mindset, one that's focused on survival, not just on profit.
This is the single most important rule to remember. Unusually high returns are not magic, they are sourced from somewhere. And if the mechanism for that yield isn't transparent, logical, and something you can actually verify, well then the source of the yield is you. You are being farmed for your capital.
The final directive is simple, a shift in focus. Stop chasing the hype, that's the bait. Start demanding transparency in the code and in the mechanics of the systems where you are deploying your capital. In this environment, due diligence is not a suggestion, it is your only defense. Briefing concluded.